Welcome to episode 500 of StrategyCast. Before you go to a different episode, because you don't recognize my voice, I promise you, this is an episode of StrategyCast that you don't want to miss. Let me introduce myself. My name is Stephen Woessner, and I'm the founder and CEO of Predictive ROI and the host of the Sell with Authority podcast. I'm here today because I'm an avid fan of Lori Jones, her team at Avocet Communications, and what they have accomplished over 500 episodes. Lori has given me the privilege of turning the microphone around, and on this, the 500th episode, putting Lori in the spotlight instead of one of her guests. You're familiar with her as the host of this podcast and as president and CEO of Avocet Communications, and maybe even how she has brilliantly led her team and shared her insights, her wisdom, and her expertise with Avocet clients for years. I've known Lori personally and professionally for over a decade, and I have witnessed time and time again how she leans into challenges, how she pours the best of what she has into her team, and how she always is looking for the next new way that Avocet can help its clients become the innovators, the disruptors, and the visionaries in their respective industries. But why? Why does she do that? Why do those three words, innovate, disruption, envision, why do they mean so much to Lori? Well, it's because Lori, at her core, embodies all three words. To find the proof points, you only have to have a conversation with Lori. In your first 5 minutes together, you'll see that what I'm telling you is true. When you hear Lori teach, when you hear Lori share lessons around what it means to become a bold and brave marketer and the guts that it takes to do it, she's speaking from experience. Lori has already blazed that trail. When Lori encourages and maybe sometimes pushes you to transform, to scale, and to grow your brand, I promise you, she can point to how her guests and how Avocet clients have done it. And when Lori says that some of the goals of this podcast and the content surrounding it are to help inspire you and to help you elevate your ideas, I will tell you, it's because those are the lessons she learned working alongside her father when they built Avocet Communications from the ground up. They built the agency brick by brick, side by side. They did it together over many years. And all of that in the trenches experience, all of the blood, all of the sweat, all of the tears, all of it over decades is what helped make Lori the savvy, strategic innovator you see today. So rest assured, when Lori looks at you from across the table or over Zoom these days, and you see the glimmer in her eye, or she breaks into a smile when she sees all of the possibilities that your ideas represent, I promise you, when she tells you that her and her team can help you create a competitive advantage in your market, believe her. It's not lip service. Creating a competitive advantage is in Lori's DNA.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Thank you, first of all, for that intro. My goodness, I have been looking so forward to this discussion because you are the inspiration as to why I even got started. So thank you for that a decade ago, almost.
Well,
500 episodes later.
that is very kind of you to say, but candidly, you got to take 99% of that back. And you have said that to me over the years
Right.
because we've known each other a long time. But, and I've said to you before that you have to take 99% of that back because sure, I will happily and humbly accept 1%. But you own the 99% because it's been you and your team that have done all of the hard work week after week for years that has made 500 possible. So kudos to you, sister.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And the hard work, when it's a joy,
Mm.
it makes all the difference in the world. I love showing up to the mic each week to bring inspiration to the mindsets of marketers and CEOs, disruptors, innovators, visionaries out there who are really trying to make an impact in the market. It's what I love.
Well, clearly, because you show up consistently with excellence and do it that way. So your audience just heard me share my opinion around why the words innovation, disruption, vision, why those are important to you.
Right.
But those are my words. I think your audience should hear why those words are important to you in your words. So why do those three words, why are they so important to you?
It's the mindset behind that entrepreneurial grit,
Hmm.
that disruptor, what they're doing to disrupt a market with a new product or a new technology, an emerging bioscience, whatever it might be. It's the innovation behind a tweak on a SaaS product
Hmm.
that is going to transform the way, brands go to market. Or it is a visionary way in which a retailer can transform people who truly need sustainable products in their household in order to make ends meet. So getting into the mindset of, first of all, those ingenious people who take the risk to bring products and solutions and services to the market, and then turning their messages into people first messaging so that the consumer, the buyer, the stakeholder totally adapts and transforms, growth and scaling and sales for them. That's what it's all about. I love it. I love working with the people that have the same mindset that I do. And even if it's not the CEO or the founder, CMOs out there are disruptors. Look at some of the amazing things people are doing right now with personalization,
Mhm.
with AI usage, all these very, very unique elements that are really disrupting the market. We're not folding back. We're not afraid of these tech changes that are transforming us. We're leaning in. And that is what really excites me day in and day out.
Okay, so that takes a lot of courage to say what you just said. There were like 4 or 5 questions that are going to come out of what you just said to slice that apart. But let's start at the end where you said we're not afraid of these tech changes.
Right.
Why? So why are you running toward when candidly, plenty of agencies, plenty of marketers are running in the opposite direction. They're running away from it because they're fearful of it. Why are you, an Avocet team, running toward it?
We pride ourselves in establishing trend.
Okay.
And because we are a part of establishing trend, and it might be early adoption or a tweak of how we take a tech product and turn it into something else, you've got to lean in. You've got to be bold. And in order to do that, you can't listen to people say that agencies, marketers, vision, or creative firms are going to be out of business in 10 days because of AI. How are we going to use it to turn it into something bold and amazing so that we can analyze more data in a short time frame, so that we can get smarter with the strategies we're developing surrounding competitive analyses, so on and so forth? The astute marketers who have that visionary mindset, who work
Mhm.
for visionaries, must lean in order to make a difference, in order to be sustainable for themselves, in order to create sustainability for the product that they're marketing.
Yep. Well said, my friend. You mentioned risk a couple of minutes ago, like who takes the risk?
Right.
Why is that? Why is that so important to you? Why do you value that so much when you see somebody putting it on the line, taking the risk, And whether that means financial, whether that means, respect within an organization, there's lots of different layers of risk. But why do you value that so much when you see somebody willing to get in the trenches and put something on the line, whether that's their name, reputation, money, whatever? Why do you value that so much?
So no guts, no glory
Mm.
to begin with, right? And let's separate this into the individual who's starting the business
Okay.
and the marketer that has been on board to promote that business. So the risk taker from the mindset of starting the business, I think that there's so much genuine love to build something.
Mm.
And it can build, it can be a service organization such as Avocet, or it can be a product or, a SaaS solution, or it can be providing that retail environment for people to go shop.
Okay.
There's so much interest in solving a need that is in the market and in the community, that the risk and the mindset that it takes to bring that to market, I think, is very, very substantial. The mindset of this is such a need out there, I must find a way to make it happen, is something so special. It's why I love working with people. Now, they also love building jobs,
Hmm.
building communities for people. And that is such a unique element of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we see today. Now, fast forward when it's time to hire a marketing team, and that CMO's mindset, or a VP of marketing, or a communications director, whatever the first hire, could even be a CRO, salespeople, whatever that first hire is, they have to match the propensity of that CEO's risk tolerance. And what we see all too often is that there isn't enough risk taken. It doesn't meet the brand quality. And they go at it a little conservatively. And
Hmm.
we know when you boldly move ahead, when you boldly, pave that path, you're going to differentiate your product, your solution far more quickly. So the 2 to 5 years that it takes to build a brand, you can shorten that dramatically by bolder on strategy approaches. And that's what this agency is all about. It is one of the litmus tests for us, for the people that we work with. Are they bold enough to get on the horse and take the ride with us?
Yeah. When you were just describing that, I literally had the mental image of you and your dad
Mm,
in the early days of Avocet, talking with that either first or early on prospective client.
right.
You guys were punching way above your weight. They wanted to come see you. And you and your dad look at each other and you're like, holy bananas, what are we
Yeah.
going to show them? Right. You guys leaned into the bold, the risk, the 180-degree, like the huge lift in order to get ready for that. You've probably shared that story before, but maybe not.
Yeah.
So would love for you to peel back the curtain for those who have not heard it, because it embodies those words, Lori.
I love that. It is, I think it's my favorite story of all time,
Mm.
to tell about business. I've got a lot of kids' stories as well as my mother role, my MOM role versus my CEO role. But as the story goes, it was early 1990, and my father and I were operating out of my parents' home. I actually had an office that was set up in my brother's bedroom in the basement. He was off to college. And my father was working up at the kitchen table, and we had been pitching a large regional rental car agency with many locations across the United States. And I took a call from Jerry, and he let us know that we were finalists for the business. And this was on a Thursday. In the same breath, he said, I would like to come by Monday, see your office, and meet your team. And I said, no problem. I will fax you the details on where we are tomorrow. This is Thursday. So I go chugging upstairs and I'm like, Dad, we need a plan and we need it quickly. So we sat down, for about an hour, and just made a list of everything that we needed to get done. After that hour, we were out looking at different rental signs in downtown Longmont. We found an office, which happens to be right around the corner from where the office building is that we purchased about 10 years ago, literally right down the alley from us, 200 feet away. And we walked inside. The leasing agent was right there. We signed a lease right then and there. So we had our first office, but then we needed to outfit it. So we had no capital. We went to a used furniture store in another town about 10 miles north of us and bought used steel case desks. At the time, they had to have been some of the ugliest desks I'd ever seen. Today, they would be worth thousands of dollars, by the way. But because ugly prevailed back in 1990, my father made a wood veneer oak top to go over the top of each desk. And then I bought plywood, foam, and upholstery fabric, cut it to each side of the desk, and glued it on so that the desks looked a little bit more avant-garde. Sunday, we moved everything into our office space. Monday, we had our entire family there to make us look bigger than we were. Jerry Martin walked in at 9 o'clock, and we had a contract at 10. And we were off to the races. That is the entrepreneurial grit, the gut, the boldness, the taking risks that we knew we just felt was going to pay off. And it did.
I've heard you share that story a number of times. And every time I hear you share it, there's a new layer, there's a new lesson. And not because you tell it differently or whatever. It's just that's the benefit of repetition, but it's so good. That is such a good story.
Thank you. It is so near and dear to my heart because, when you graduate from college, I was broadcast journalism major and really did not enjoy what I was doing. And just on a whim, my father asked me to work with him. And on a whim, I said yes. Next to saying yes, when my husband asked me to marry him, this was the next best yes in my life. And I'm so glad that I did. And I didn't, some of it was I didn't know any different. And you just do what it takes to get it done, right? It's just a beautiful, beautiful story.
Amen. But it really peels back the inner workings inside Lori and what you value and why. So let's switch gears here and let me ask you to reflect on 500 episodes. That is such a significant accomplishment. It is a big deal. So I know that if I say, what's been the most rewarding experience, that is going to be challenging because there's many. And you're going to be able to think of moment after moment after moment, and it's not fair to compete one against the other. I'm going to ask you the question anyway, but you decide on how you want to answer that. But if you were to think of the most rewarding experience for you as the host of this podcast for 500 episodes, what's it been and why?
There's a few different ways I'm going to answer that.
Okay.
The first one is friendship. I have interviewed people on this show that have become incredible friends, you included. And those friendships will last a lifetime, even when we may all be, retired and these friendships will last. I'm having an FAC this afternoon, as a matter of fact, with one of the ladies from Brocade out of California that ended up moving to Colorado that I interviewed on the show for the first time 5 years ago. Lisa's become a dear friend, and she hires us everywhere, every company she goes to now as well. So that kind of leans into the second side of this is these friendships have turned into working relationships with many, many people and deep and profound respect for what they bring to the table and what me as a communications leader and my team brings to the table as well. And that to me is such a gift. And finally, what I would say is I'm smarter because every single person that I've interviewed on this show, the wisdom share, you see this a lot in my posts, and I thank everyone every week for the wisdom share. There's so many incredible mindsets out there from a communications standpoint as it relates to PR, as it relates to strategy, as it relates to crisis comms, to marketing, to advertising, to funnel management, whatever the topic might be, CRO development, revenue implementation programs, all these topics that are so important to our listeners and that can grow by and learn by. And I learn, my team learns. We have an intern turned into, he's now our AI specialist on the team. He's been on the team for 7 years. He didn't have any marketing experience as an intern, but I hired him to catalog all of our podcasts. He learned the business through listening to every single one of our guests. I mean, what a great gift for people.
Well, amen. I mean, you're talking about thousands of hours of professional development from some really wicked smart people that you've had the chance to interview and learn from, and then be able to share that with your team, and also obviously be able to share that with your audience. You think of the thousands and thousands of hours of incredible education. What a gift.
I know. I love it. It's how my son, our second son, produced the podcast all through college. He was a marketing major. He had so many wisdom shares as well. It was another way for him to learn. Our youngest daughter is now, producing the podcast, and my niece. I mean, what great gifts. What great gifts.
Yeah, indeed. And so this is interesting when you mentioned like the friendships that have turned into all of these powerful business relationships too. So friendship, and when you can combine friendship and business relationships, I mean, it's a beautiful thing when you can work alongside people that you know, love, using one of your, or I guess 4 of your words, deep and profound respect. I mean, what a beautiful combination that is. But I find it interesting, and here's what I mean by this is that, my guess is you get this question, I get this question, like, how much longer are you going to do this? Like, as far as like hosting a podcast? And in my answer, and I'm curious to know what yours is, my answer is like, why would I ever want to stop? I mean, every time that I get to hang out with a Lori Jones and whomever is the guest, that's my opportunity for them to take me to school. Right? Like I get to learn from their experiences, their trials, their tribulations, using wisdom as a word that you've used several times in this conversation. Why would I ever want that to stop? So I now get a chance to ask you, how long are you going to keep doing this, Lori?
Well, my husband asks me that question quite a bit because he's getting ready to retire. And one of the gifts of COVID was realizing that remote working is easy.
Amen.
So I don't plan on stopping anytime soon at all. I mean, let's go for another decade or 2, quite frankly. I love showing up to the mic and having these conversations. I love it. And when you love something so much, bringing my father into, and I thought this was so bold of him at the time, because the potential loss he could have felt was incredible. He said to me very early on in my career, the minute you stop enjoying this is the minute you need to do something else. Think about a father telling his business partner, who happens to be his daughter, that. I mean, that's how deep and profound the love was between the 2 of us. And so why would you stop when you love something so much? I mean, there's going to come the point. I mean, we need to stay relevant. That is something I think about each and every day. And this podcast helps me stay there.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a little bit of the breaking of the 4th wall and just say to your audience, see, I told you so. Right? Like you can just feel the energy from her when she answers the questions that way. Now, I have the benefit of seeing her right now. So maybe you're listening through a podcast channel, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube, or one of the other litany of ways that you can listen to this conversation, or maybe see the conversation. But you can see the passion in her eyes. I can see the passion in her eyes. So like when she's having this conversation with you, the audience, it's there. Like this is real. So let's switch gears maybe again, and I'm going to ask you to kind of look forward, which I know is some of the things that you love to do best. So I'm going to ask you to look backward and then also forward. So in the last couple of years, so let's not go back like a decade or more. Let's think of maybe in the last 24 months, What do you think are some of the most significant innovations around marketing, around strategy? And then what do you anticipate being the next trends going forward? So in the last couple of years, these are the most significant things. And then putting your trend hat on, what do you anticipate going forward for the next couple of years?
So my gut reaction is personalization.
Hmm.
And our buyer today is very, very savvy. They've got so much choice.
Yeah.
And they need to interact with a brand 26 times to make a buying decision. So without a brand connecting with their buyer in a very one-on-one way,
Hmm.
they're going to get pushed aside almost immediately within seconds. So what we can do to personalize not just messages, but delivery of messages, on time delivery, and something that's pertinent that isn't talking about what you do and how you do it, but how it can benefit them is where we need to be moving. It's amazing, Stephen, the number of brands that we have to completely re-strategize because what they're doing in market is 100% wrong. They are not personalizing a message. They don't have enough messages out there to understand what is working and what is not. They're not, they're taking a pray and spray approach.
Hmm.
They aren't speaking in a way that is compelling. And quite often, we see people insulting people's intelligence or even marketing something, and you don't even know what it is that they're selling. You have no idea. A lot of people that we've worked with over the years really felt that their products were going to sell themselves because they're so big or because they were so novel and different. And the marketing, the business strategy is what failed the marketing. That engineer mindset at the top was comfortable talking about how it worked. They weren't comfortable talking about why someone should care. And so personalization through tech, through strategy is really taking brands to the next level. It may sound a little archaic, but the technology allowed, think about it,
Mm-hmm.
chat, polls right now. Murad is a great example of when you're trying to figure out what lotion you can buy, you can go to Murad and you can, say, this is my skin, and they're going to give you the right product. Think about when you're buying a new GMC product, you can go on to the website and say, like, this color leather, this color, this blank, 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 blank. You've got a car and you can order it right then and there. That is personalization as well. And all of that combined, I think, is very important. Now, moving forward, it's got to be AI and generative AI, right? So what we're doing with AI today to be able to think about segmentation, think about customer interplay, think about customer analysis, competitor analysis, all these data points that you can now put into many different chat tools to gain wisdom fairly quickly and hunches that will allow you to go into additional research modes and find out additional details to quantify or qualify what you've just learned, or to go to market and A/B test things as well in a far more quicker way. That is the gift, and that's why we lean into it, why we're not shying away from it, that I think a lot of brand marketers, awareness marketers, funnel marketers, GTM marketers really need to be paying attention to today.
Oh my gosh, that is so smart. Okay. So there are a couple of pieces that would love to lean in more with you on. First is going to be the wisdom piece, the gaining wisdom quickly, and then would love to go backward and go back to the 26 times to making a buying decision. But so I'm just going to put a pin in that for a second. And then just to emphasize this point and to get a couple of more nuggets here in context around. So like when you were talking about, running toward things versus marketers running in the opposite direction, like we were talking about maybe 10, 15 minutes ago. And then you just said, using AI and then all of the things that are around it, you said to gain wisdom quickly.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't about, and so I'm kind of gleaning some things about your point of view here, and then I'm going to ask you to verify this or contradict it. that when you say that, when you said to gain wisdom quickly, it's not about getting more things done cheaply. Maybe that's a side benefit or whatever, or creating content faster, than hiring an expert to do it. You said to gain wisdom quickly.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, so why do you believe that so strongly?
Well, we're doing it.
Hmm.
So I know
Okay.
it. Before, let's use Google as an example.
Okay.
We're studying, we're finding insights, we're trying to find research papers out there to gain insight. We're looking at Google reviews to the litany of B2B reviews that are out there to gain insight on the consumer. Now there are, or the buyer, now there are tools out there that allow us to input a question and have all 6 of those categories come up at once. ChatGG, come up at once in order for us to gain more insight more quickly and then download that data, put it into something very concise and categorical, and then upload it back up to, maybe a chat GPT to have it find insights for us that we can then go and dive into with one-on-one conversations or qualify through additional review sites to see how many times this might be mentioned. That saves time, which allows us to work on the product that we're going to push out to market that is going to impact the buyer mindset and create faster at bats for every single one of our clients.
Brave and bold, Lori.
Yeah,
Brave and bold, right? And instead of running from, running toward. And wisdom is such a powerful word, right?
right.
And so when you said gain wisdom quickly, oh my gosh, and then you just obviously added a lot of layers and context there. Let's go back to, so thank you for that. Let's go back to when you said 26 times
Right.
to make a buying decision. That's a lot of
Yeah.
interactions with a brand or service or however you want to categorize that. But tell us a little bit more about the 26 times to make a buying decision, because that feels elongated.
Well,
And maybe not, but we'll love your perspective there.
it's crazy. And by the way, there are very astute people out there that think it might even be higher.
Hmm.
We have taken something kind of that we've experienced on our own, and brought that information forward. Years ago, back where, traditional quote unquote marketing and advertising was the go-to market approach, we
Hmm.
knew that someone needed to interact with a brand 3 to 6 times to make a buying decision.
Right.
Why was it so small back then? Because they had less choice regarding the number of messages that they would receive on a daily basis because the media channels were so limited.
Yep.
Now, with media channels being so robust, screen to screen viewing, back then you saw a B2B or a consumer or retail CPG spot on TV, and then you might get a direct mail piece, and
Hmm.
then maybe a phone call. Or you'd go in store and take a visit and see Aunt Jemima and say, "This is for me. I like it. The brand feels right. I'm going to buy it." With the advent of all these additional media channels and screen-to-screen viewing, mobile versus laptop versus desktop, social media channels, how many do we all have on our mobile devices right now, so on and so forth. Because we are so fragmented as a buying audience, that's why the number has increased to 26 times.
Hmm.
And what's important here is what we do to maintain visibility and awareness within the brand so that we're moving them through the funnel in a very succinct way to shorten that. How we shorten those numbers and the buying cycle is a lot of what we've already talked about. It's being bold, it's being brave, it's differentiating yourself through creating distinction.
Hmm.
Distinction within the buyer mindset is key. It has to be relevant to them so that they notice you more quickly. Creative, the headlines, the approach, all of that is very, very important at that point. And relativity, we can't forget that.
Yeah. So that is okay. So that's telling me that yes, the funnel has changed. Not just because of the number of channels, but also because of the depth, the content that needs to be shared throughout those different channels throughout the different stages in somebody's journey. So not only using your word like personalization, so not only does content need to be personalized, but it also needs to be contextualized based on the stage with their that someone is moving through that experience with the brand, right?
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting area to dive into a little bit. It's a great question because that context that we're talking about, um, what is happening in real life in someone's world
Yeah.
is what we've got to meet people at. And a lot of times what we talk about is, are we challenging someone, a direct competitor, or are we challenging something? And where we're really diving into right now is that something, which is the context that you're talking about. And it's because, especially during this time period that we're in right now, there's, a war. It's a political environment. We've got an economic environment that is, up and down and up and down. A lot of
Mhm.
people uneasy. I feel uneasy. Things are costing more than they ever have. If you're me, we're becoming empty nesters. That's like horrible. I'm really trying to adapt to that. Everyone has their personal thing going on as well. So how do we as brands meet that context and create meaning for
Yeah.
what we do? Patagonia is such a great example. What they've done with their brand, they sell great product, but they've taken their product to a totally different level by making sure that the way it's produced is sustainable, that making sure the plants that it's produced in, that there are fair wages. The stories go on and on and on. So when you are meeting people where they are, I need a jacket.
Yep.
And when you are providing additional context to real life situations that affect people day in and day out, it creates meaning for the brand. And
Yep.
when you create meaning for the brand, that number decreases, more products are sold, and you win.
Yeah, you just I love all of that. And through that, I think you just shared, in my opinion, a big strategic insight, a big golden nugget. And here's what I mean by that. You said, are we challenging a direct competitor? Which I think is very common, right? When we're thinking, oh, we need a competitive advantage. We need to think about, company XYZ, they've got X market share, and we need to steal that market share. And that's a maybe a base level of thinking.
Mhm.
You said, are we challenging a direct competitor or a something?
Right.
Right. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And the reality is, in today's landscape, it's a composition of those things. Yes, there are the direct competitors in your industry. Do they have a better go-to-market strategy than you? Maybe. Do they have more financial resources than your brand? Possibly. Or could you actually build a competitive advantage? And then also, what are the other constraints or opportunities that exist in the environment, the something that you just mentioned? Because it's not just A plus B equals C strategic game anymore, right? It's a multivariate approach. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And it's like the David and Goliath, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many Davids right now that are surpassing the enterprise brands in market because they are not going after the direct competitor. Think about how difficult it is to
Mhm.
compete with a Goliath. What can they do to create distinction, meet the mindset of the buyer within context that they're dealing with day in and day out? And that's truly how you create not just differentiation, not just competitive advantage, but
Mhm.
distinction. Again, I'm going to say it, I don't know, maybe a 20th time for this interview, reducing that 26 times to maybe 10.
Yeah. Well, and there's friction in that whole sales process, right? In our job as leaders, strategists, marketers, whatever hat we're wearing, is how can we, in a non-schwarmy way, remove friction from that process? And then also going back to a word that you shared before, deep and profound respect. How can we have deep and profound respect for our clients or for our clients to recognize that it's not about shoving somebody through a sales funnel? And that's what I think that and your team at Avocet so astutely know. It's about understanding all the different variables in that strategic mix, and then thinking, okay, how can we meet the customer where they're at and guide them without them feeling like they're being guided, because that's nuance and that takes experience to be able to do it. And then be able to have deep and profound respect so that they look at the brand with also deep and profound respect, right?
I agree. So the best messaging, I believe, in the market, and there's a lot of strategy and of course, communications and marketing and advertising tactics that have to back this up.
Okay.
The best messaging in the market truly does not sell. It
Hmm.
motivates. It motivates.
Mm.
And that is where, back to what we talked about earlier with the bold approaches. What are we doing to motivate the buyer to want to lean in to the brand to learn more? A lot of that has to do with positioning strategies. We've got around 25 different buckets and different types of positioning strategies at the agency that we pretty much fit our clients into. And most people, they just go so broad with everything and it's not strategic. They don't have a market position that they're going to own, that the brand or the buyer rather just completely looks past them. And without that strategy up front, without understanding what position you can own through not challenging someone, but challenging something,
Mhm.
that is where you set up a brand for success. And then, of course, team alignment is completely key as well. It can't stop there. It can't stop with marketing. How are we aligning sales? How are we aligning the revenue team? Do we have good communication with the revenue team regarding how it's working, how it's not? Our inside sales versus outside. All these things. If it's a retail environment, are the cashiers or the people walking the aisles, do they have that personal touch to make sure that they're in tune with the market position and the brand that we're building? All those things come into play. How we follow up, personalization, a coupon as you walk through the door, or an email message that you get that has your first name spelled right, not a dear sir, sir or ma'am. All those sort of things come into play.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Amen to all of that. I know that we need to start coming in for a landing here. But before we do, you mentioned, like, why does it motivate? How does it motivate? You said motivating buyers to lean in and learn more. So when I heard the words lean in and learn more, thought leadership.
It
Now
is.
you may completely disagree with me on this, which I totally get, because this is your space, not mine. Like the industries and so forth that Avocet works in, you have, that's your area of expertise, not mine. But so again, you might completely disagree with me. But when you said learn more, that made me think thought leadership and why brands are not doing more of that. So if the goal is to motivate buyers to lean in and learn more, that means as a brand, we need to teach them. We need to share. We need to share our wisdom and expertise so they can see that we give a rip about them. So why do you think there is a gap? And again, maybe you'll disagree with me that there isn't a gap.
There's a huge gap.
Hmm.
And I think it is one of the areas that every brand in the world must be deploying is thought leadership.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the percentage is, Stephen, but it's minuscule.
Hmm.
And so authenticity and trust is so important today. One
Hmm.
of the best ways to build that is through thought leadership. There's a gazillion different ways to build thought leadership. This podcast obviously is one of those. It's speaking, it's PR, it's blogging, it's ebooks, it's conversations, it's video vignettes. There's millions of different ways. Not enough people are doing it because it's hard.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of effort, but it also takes creating that area of distinction that is very, very important. I'm going to give you a client example, a client that we love, love, love so much. It happens to be a thrift operator. And we have turned thrift operations in the state of Colorado into something that is more popular than it ever has been through very, very astute brand character, creative strategies, differentiation through owning who we are, not, being a Macy's-esque in the marketplace, but also really focusing on the mission. This particular thrift operator, ARC Thrift Stores, supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's their mission, is to employ people there. So fast forward to all these recent discussions around DEI and thought leadership. So we have positioned their CEO as a thought leader on DEI across the world on employment of people with IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities. That position is totally missed within every DEI framework in the world right now. They are not talking about hiring people with IDD. They're talking about everything else. And for us, it's such an inclusive way to manage it because it includes DEI, but on such a broader level. And we love it. And Lloyd Lewis is getting, we're creating speaking engagements for Lloyd Lewis across the world right now regarding this topic, and not just talking about and shoving it in people's face, but motivating them on how they can get it done. Here's how you hire someone with IDD. Here are the best steps. Here's how you interview. Here's how you, you take a look at maybe they need more breaks, or maybe what the position is with someone based on the different modality that they do or don't have. All these sort of things come into consideration. Motivation and education at the same time.
I love how you just brought that full circle, right? Because a few minutes ago you said, why does it motivate? And then again, motivate buyers to lean in and learn more, right? That is a lesson or a strategy, if you will, that can stretch across a lot of different disciplines. So I know we need to come in for a landing, but before we close out, or before I ask you to close out your own show, before we do that, in anything, I know we covered a lot, but anything you think we might have missed, anything else that you'd like to share, any other recommendations and so forth, again, before we sign off and you say goodbye for us.
Well, I do know this. You and I could talk for another hour or two. So there's always a lot that we never get to. But what I would say, especially in the environment that we're in right now, creating trust is so important. Mm-hmm. And you don't say, trust me. That's not trustworthy. You create trust through everything that we've talked about today. It's the authenticity, it's wisdom, it's motivation, it's being bold in a very, very authentic way. That's how you create trust today. It doesn't matter what you're selling. If you are not creating trust, you're going to lose the race. And we are very competitive. We want to see everyone we work with win. And so I would leave you with that.
My goodness. Okay, everyone. So I'll of course leave the last words here for Lori, but this is what I want to say. No matter how many notes you took, and Lori, as visual evidence, I think you gave me that seven pages of notes there, right? Yeah, color coded too. So everyone, no matter how many notes you took, or how often you go back and re-listen to Lori's words of wisdom, and I sure hope that you do, the key is you have to take what she so generously shared with you in this episode and the other 499. You have to take that and apply it, because when you do, you will accelerate your results. So Lori, thank you so much for your kind invitation. I mentioned at the beginning in the introduction, is a privilege to be here. So when you asked me, I was honored to be invited. And I truly do feel like this is a privilege. So I'm very, very grateful for that, my friend. Thank you.
Well, I thank you, Stephen. I'm so glad that you said yes. And you are my first episode as well. So it's so fitting that here we are at our 500th and you're interviewing me. So thank you, my friend. I deeply appreciate it. Before I move on to saying goodbye to our audience today, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Oh gosh. Well, thank you for that. LinkedIn, probably. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Maybe there's multiple Stephen Woessners, but it's LinkedIn, whatever / Stephen Woessner. And then predictiveroi.com would be the two best ways. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure. And for listeners, thank you for showing up every week. Thank you for the note taking, the aha moments, the insights that you share with me. I love you. And I want to continue doing this for as long as I possibly can. I can't wait for another 500 episodes. And thank you so much for showing up every week. You can get a hold of me at Lori@StrategyCast.com. And don't forget to sign up for the StrategyCast newsletter at StrategyCast.com as well. Thank you, Stephen. I love you too, my friend. And I
I
can't
love
wait.
you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.